like the grass is green, and everything I do is unseen. But I know that's just in my mind. I know everything is just in my mind. Do you really want to be famous? Do you really want to be a superstar? Do you really want to get dangerous? Do you even know where the groupies are? Bitches out here be...
Welcome to Hammer's House.
You know, when the first time I ended up hearing this with our new intro, I had to think this was probably the best beat I've ever heard so far. I cannot wait for the new intro for Spotlight Sports Network to come out. But so as of right now, joining me here on the Snake Sports Talk Show via the Global Satellite Network presented by StreamYard is Jeff Hammond, aka Hammer, and he is the guy you go to at a place called Hammer's House, who gives you all the content from everything Raiders and everything Mets. So, Hammer, I know you are definitely excited for one with the Mets. The one that, you know, because the big time trade, we'll get into that in momentarily, but I definitely want to break down the latest news that happened with the Las Vegas Raiders. So they decide to go with Gus Bradley as their defensive coordinator. Now, mind you, Gus Bradley in the last 3 years altogether, even this past season, he was ranked 3rd, 8th, and 14th in defense. Now, Gus has had his moments of being smart with the defensive play calling, but then as we saw things unravel from last season and the season prior, it just kind of seems like there's been some interesting looks. But in your perspective, when you heard the news, what do you think will change about the Raiders defense that has been something you've been speaking about for a while now that you think Gus Bradley might bring to the table?
That's the thing. I'm not I'm not 100% sure. Like when I heard about the signing, I kind of dropped a couple of F-bombs at the top of my lungs. I'm not going to do it on your show. But doing some reading, listened to the press conference today, more or less said all the right things, but it's like you worked alongside Gruden before, and more or less that's how you got your foot in the door. And number two, who's to say you're not going to be a yes man to him now? He clearly said at the end of the season-ending press conference that he still wants to continue the 4-3. Now, mind you, Gus Bradley's had experience as a head coach, defensive coordinator over years, was the architect of the Seattle Seahawks and their Legion of Boom from 2009 to 2012, where they heavily ran the cover 3, which they were very successful with and had talent in Richard Sherman, just won
Byron Maxwell and
like that whole
Cam
secondary,
Chancellor,
Cam Chancellor, who one of my favorite defensive backs. Like those guys were something special, and they played by his calls, they played by his schemes, and they were successful with it. And we have a lot of young guys on defense, a lot of young and inconsistent guys on defense. Jonathan Abram, Damon Arnett, Trayvon Mullen, Cleve Farrell, Max Crosby. And that's just a few to name right now. Like, they need to step up this coming season. And we need to see exactly how much control of that defense is Gus Bradley really going to have.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting because, again, I think the Raiders, we know this whole, first season because there were an awful lot of expectations. And you and I have spoke about it. Of course, a couple of our colleagues have spoke about it. But obviously, you guys are tired of losing, and I get that. But it seemed like, the defense, because there were a lot of key additions initially when it came to the offseason. And then all of a sudden you get into the middle of the season, it's just kind of like, well, this is not what we initially thought, looking at the blueprint, like this was going to unfold. And now, of course, you guys have had your reservations about Paul Guenther. Now Guenther was gone in the middle of the season, and you bring in Rod Marinelli to clean things up. And it still kind of seems like there are still things missing. So I think in my perspective when I watched Gus Bradley, because there were times where it felt like the defense is as far as in the front seven, I feel like are going to get a little more aggressive, especially when you got names like Max Crosby, Carl Nassib, and a couple of others that are there on that front line. But at the same time, the only thing that concerns me is how the secondary is going to be shaped, knowing that you have Jonathan Abram, who has to reshape his game in order to be a better secondary player, and not to mention, too, the amount of veterans that are there on the defensive side of the field. In this situation now, I mean, because the Raiders, of course, they got a lot to deal with in the division in the AFC West, because knowing how to contain Justin Herbert, knowing how to contain Patrick Mahomes and that crazy offense, and then you also have the Denver Broncos. But as things have finished up, because let's be honest, John Gruden, we don't even know if he's actually going to be the big time piece that helps this Raiders team really win. But do you think somewhere down the road, the Raiders, if this thing don't work again, do you think Mark Davis really needs to have that sit down talk with guys like Mike Mayock and the rest of the company and figure things out of what needs to happen for this Raiders team to be competitive?
Absolutely, especially after this coming season. If they are not a playoff contender, get deep in the playoffs this coming season, everybody's going to be coming out of the woodwork for Gruden's head. The $100 million man is a 500 head coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's not satisfying for us. There were some things that Gus Bradley said in the presser today, including how because obviously he's a defensive coordinator, so he sees a lot of their offense, was saying how he has seen a major change and evolve in the Raiders offense. And yes, they got weapons. They got Waller. They got Renfro. They got Jacobs. Ruggs. A terrible year. Dude had more fumbles than he did touchdowns. And there's little things that he needs to work on. Aguilar, I would love for them to re-sign him, but that defense was just abysmal. Like, you played the Falcons and Jets in back-to-back weeks and gave up over 400 rushing yards. Gunther should have been fired then. Yeah. And yet they kept him. Like, we started off the season 6-3 and finished 2-5. Come on. The last 2 years, you guys were in the hunt for the playoffs, and then at the end of the season, you shit the bed pretty much, and your playoff hopes are out the window. And here we are now, a week and 2 days after the regular season. They're sitting at home now, and a week and 2 days after the season ended, they have a new defensive coordinator. My thing was, who else did they interview for this spot? Because you and I spoke about it. I had 3 people in mind: Wade Phillips, Rex Ryan, Matt Patricia. Why do I feel like none of them even got remotely, like, one little text or a phone call for an interview?
Right, and then not to mention, too, to add in that mix, Raheem Morris in the middle of it, too, as well. But, yeah, it's kind of interesting because, at the same time, this is a franchise that, is trying to now push for a new look here in Las Vegas, because everything that they've had in the past in Los Angeles and Oakland, obviously that's all there in the past, and now trying to look into the future here in Las Vegas. I still think it's a process that's going to be built, and it's going to be built at the highest extent. But the question is, for how long will that take? And of course, a lot of Raider fans have been waiting for that. Here with me, Jeff Hammond, aka Hammer, here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. So my one big thing is, before we move on, is obviously the whole Derek Carr situation. You and I have had the conversations, and we've gone back and forth with, what we saw with how Derek Carr played. I'm just going to tell you this. I think Derek Carr, outside of Tom Brady, there is nobody that I can think of who's had at least similar, or if not more, fourth quarter clutch comebacks, who's efficient when it comes to game is on the line and we need to score and we need to get the offense moving. Now a lot of people seem to be having all of this pushback and stuff like that. What this is where I try to get into to the bottom of it, because obviously people are like, they're ready to move on. They're ready to move on from Derek Carr. They're ready for this and that. But I'm like, my thing is, it took the Raiders 14 quarterbacks to find the one quarterback. Do you think Derek Carr, with the way that things are shaping up on offense, do you think he's still capable enough that he could lead this Raiders team to the promised land? Or will somewhere down the road, the Raiders are going to have to look back at this and they feel like it must not be working? They may have to think of somebody else. Your thoughts?
I think the next year or two, that's what's going to happen. The next year or two is going to be the ultimate factor now, because even this past season, top 10 quarterback down the board pretty much in every single category.
Yeah.
From the time he broke his leg, and I believe it was 2016.
Yeah, it was actually like 2015, 2016.
He's been scared to break the pocket and run. And there's times where he has broken the pocket that he has terrible ball security, fumbles the ball. Like he does these ridiculous dives and loses the ball. But I feel like he's not fully to blame right now, more or less, because Gruden liked him back when Gruden did a quarterback camp with him ages ago. And Gruden still has that old school West Coast short passing game offense where like you have weapons that can go deep and you're not throwing it deep that often. But I would say give it a year or two. The people that talk about Carr, mostly the Carr haters, the bandwagon fans, or people that just don't know football and haven't put on a pair of shoulder pads or a helmet a day in their life. But realistically, I say give him another year or two. The reason they brought Mariota in last season was to light a fire up Carr's ass for him to actually show and prove. And he did pretty damn well throughout the season. But it was, one, you weren't putting up enough points as an offense to win games, or when you did put up a decent amount of points, defense was keeping our opponents in the game. And a lot of times we would lose those games. So, I feel like it's a 50-50 thing between who's really to blame. Actually, no, it's like a 33 between Carr, Gruden, and the Raiders defense.
Yeah. I mean, and I totally agree, because, at the same time, because ultimately it's who are you asking to put more of the workload on? Are you asking the offense now to have to be an overpowering offense that has to score 40-plus points a game? Or are you asking the defense to be shut down as possible, pressure up the quarterback, make the pocket uncomfortable, and for the secondaries to just be all shut down, no fly zone type of defense? Because at the end of the day, if you get the right people in the right places who balance this out, I mean, ultimately it's a pendulum effect, because if the pendulum is one side over the other, these are the results you're going to end up getting. I mean, we see this with certain teams. But if you play the cards well enough, you add the right key additions, hopefully it's what will help to balance the pendulum that could make this team a lot better, and who knows, even punch their ticket back into the playoffs and be a complete threat in the playoffs that people don't even think of. But and this is my last thing before we move on, but you did mention about, the struggle with Henry Ruggs in his rookie year. And yes, there were times where it felt like Henry Ruggs couldn't fit into the system right away. And sometimes that does happen with certain rookies. There's some that don't really establish to the playbook right away, and there are some that just it just comes naturally to them. And my question to you is, looking at how we see with Henry Ruggs and with all these wide receivers that the Raiders have or have acquired, do you think there may be a bounce back year for Henry Ruggs, and maybe somewhere in the middle of the offseason that the Raiders and Ruggs could both end up working toward to maybe possibly boost up his potentials for the 2021 season?
I hope there's a bounce back year for him, but also I want to see Bryan Edwards a lot more involved in the offense. Dude is a big body wideout. who we saw towards the end of the season make things happen. I know he got injured earlier in the season, but he was a prospect going into the draft last year, like 2 months before the draft at least. It was one dude I was looking at, and I was like, we need a weapon like this. And they got him. Ruggs, he was not the receiver I wanted. I actually wanted CeeDee Lamb, and I probably hear it from Raider fans all the time, but at the same time, there was a method to Mayock's madness, and I tell people this all the time. The reason that we got Ruggs instead of these other guys in Judy and Lamb was the Chiefs were looking to trade up. They were going to trade up and get Ruggs because they knew Sammy Watkins. They were not going to retain Watkins. He's now, once the season's over, he's going to be a free agent. Now, imagine if they traded up and got Ruggs, and you had Hill on one side and Ruggs on the other. That would just be scary.
Yeah, not to mention so much speed on that offense. Oh, Lord.
Mayock, there was a method to the madness, and it was to prevent the Chiefs from getting a hold of him. So it is what it is. I hope he does have a bounce back. He definitely needs to get his strength up, especially after that one shot that he took in the last game against the Broncos. But I'm definitely hoping he has a bounce back season next year.
Jeff Hammond, a.k.a. Hammer, on Hammer's House here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. So let's talk about baseball, my friend, because you and I, we're big-time baseball fanatics. We just can't wait for the next season to come around. Obviously, you've had a big day. You've been smiling an awful lot because of the fact of the New York Mets made the biggest decision under the Steve Cohen era, where they go and acquire two big names, Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco. When I saw the trade, I thought, okay, the Mets organization, after all these years, they're not messing around this time. Because, listen, I love Pete Alonso, the biggest it factor for the Mets. There are a couple of youngsters that are there that need to develop and I think are going to get better as time rolls on. But my one biggest key thing is with how this rotation is going to favor and how the bullpen is going to step up. So let's start with the Francisco Lindor acquisition. Give me your perspective. The second you heard the news that the Mets officially traded for him, what was the big thing that you think is going to turn things around for the Mets?
Having a switch hitter that's great on defense at the shortstop position, something we haven't had in quite some time. The fact that Lindor actually had better numbers in every single category than any Met shortstop we've had in the last 3 years. It was a big name. It was something we needed to do to bolster this team, to bolster this lineup. And honestly, this is the biggest trade the Mets have made since trading for Mike Piazza in 2000. I was 12 years old, so that was 1998.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's definitely something I've been very happy about these last few days, especially with the addition of his teammate from Cleveland, pitcher Carlos Carrasco as well. But we knew something big was going to come from the time that Steve Cohen finally bought the team from the Wilpons. Thank goodness. We knew change was coming, especially with his first press conference and introduction as a new Mets owner. He said he wasn't going to spend too much, but he wasn't going to spend for the wrong reasons or the wrong players either. And we saw that with the Wilpons, with guys like Jason Bay, guys like Yoenis Cespedes and others. Like when he became,
I mean, hell, the only one that I can even think of too was that contract they gave to Johan Santana.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
Like the day that he was introduced as a new owner, I was shouting up and down, "It's a new day," and you know what? I couldn't be happy. I've been a Met fan since I was since '86. I was 9 months old when they won their last World Series. Then Carrasco as well. Carrasco he missed the 2019 season with he was diagnosed with leukemia. Came back last year. Numbers were pretty solid, but overall, the guy is a really good pitcher, and he actually has already put in. I guess he's in Mr. Cohen's ear a little bit. He made a pitch, pun intended, For the Mets to try to get Trevor Bauer or Corey Kluber in the rotation as well for the Mets. And this is a quote directly from Carlos Carrasco from the presser today. I'd be really happy to see Trevor Bauer or Corey Kluber in this rotation. I spent a lot of time with Mike Clevenger, who's now, I believe, a Padre. Trevor Bauer, Corey Kluber, a lot of those teammates. Carrasco said, I'd be really happy to see one of those two guys in the Mets uniform. They are really good pitchers. Now, just imagine if they were added to the rotation as well.
Yeah, you can just imagine that. I mean, listen, I love Jacob deGrom, and I mean, listen, I have my thoughts on Steven Matz. I mean, it seemed like initially he looked like he was going to acclimate as a low end of the rotation type of guy that I think, is as a fourth or fifth starter. He was going to be a guy that was going to stabilize the rest of the rotation, because ultimately, if your first two, if not three guys are on point, then at the very least, you can have stabilizing guys who, it's basically like a Jenga block. You could fit them into those positions, and it would help to stabilize the rotation moving forward until, rinse and repeat. Now you go back to your first three starters again. So I like the acquisition with Carlos Carrasco. I think it does bring a lot of stability as far as you could utilize him as a 2 or a 3 starter and then finish the rest from the low end. But I still think that would be incredible if you had Trevor Bauer or if you had Corey Kluber in the middle of that rotation. But, of course, think about the injuries that Kluber's had lately. It is going to be very interesting to see how he pitches well. But if all things go well, I think that could be interesting for the Mets. But even for looking for Trevor Bauer, because you have to think about it, the Dodgers are worried about one thing. They are worried about the thing is because San Diego made all these moves. They go and get players. They're stacking up. They're beefing up. And, of course, my one thought is because of the emergence of Fernando Tatis Jr. That's the only thing that I can think of. You got a kid who's transformative, a guy that, could be the face of baseball in the future. They're going to go with that potential. Now, it would be interesting, but if this does play right, do we consider the Mets that if they go and get Trevor Bauer and they basically bolster this rotation, do we see them being big-time threats in the NL East, knowing they have to face up against the Atlanta Braves?
I spoke to Michael Kay on his show on ESPN New York the other day, the day that the trade happened, and I went down with the lineup, the projected lineup, but I also threw in George Springer if we happen to get him, but I don't think at this point it's going to happen. I think we're better off pivoting for Jackie Bradley, the outfield position, but like Francisco Lindor, Michael Conforto, Pete Alonso, Dominic Smith, Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, JD Davis, and James McCann as a starting lineup. The rotation, I don't think Thor's going to be back until late in the season after recovering from Tommy John. So right now, with the addition of Carlos Carrasco, you got Jacob deGrom, Carlos Carrasco, Marcus Stroman, Steven Matz, and David Peterson, which honestly I would swap and put David Peterson as a number 4 over Matz. But honestly, at this point, right now, we are the Mets, that is. They are World Series contenders. I feel if they were to get another bat and bolster up that bullpen, whether it being George Springer if we happen to land him, or Jackie Bradley Jr. if we happen to land him, and try to get some bullpen help, I think if we get those pieces, then we'll be certified World Series contenders. Definitely.
Wow. Yeah, and you know what? I mean, because you have to think about it. The NL, there's a bunch of teams right now that's knocking up on the door. But in my one biggest perspective, because, I mean, for me, I've been a diehard baseball fan ever since by birth. I mean, I played the game. I've watched the game. What we witnessed last year and how things were shaped up. Now, I'm sure you've got your reservations about Commissioner Rob Manfred. I did myself too. And my one biggest thing is when last year happened, because number one, the pandemic was not planned. It was not planned at all. It was something that just occurred, and we're trying to acclimate and we're trying to make the most of it as best as we could. And right now, from what I'm hearing on news, is that teams, they're informing them to be prepared for spring training, and they're going to move on with a 162 game season. When you when we take us to when you watched how the season unfold, what were some of the positives that came out of this from last year's shortened season, and some of the cons as well? And what perspectives what do we see with this next season shaping up that could be better than what last season we took from it?
I was excited with how they split the divisions last year and how that ran throughout the season. It was very, very interesting and very fun to watch. The universal DH, I definitely think they need to keep that in Major League Baseball. That would definitely be a major thing for certain teams in the National League as well. Like, I know some of the Mets have a few pitchers that can hit. Well, really one pitcher can hit, and that's DeGrom. And Thor just a little bit. But the one thing I really was not too big on was the whole extra inning crap with the, you have a runner on second base, and that, like, it's not.
Yeah, I never saw the point of that. I mean, listen, I understand that if it's a regular season thing, you know what I mean, and just to at least speed the pace of the game through the season. But I would never want to see that get implemented into postseason, because it's postseason for a reason. You and I, you and I have experienced it. When postseason baseball comes around the corner, forget about the season, forget about everything that we've learned through it. It's postseason baseball. Anything can happen from there, and we have to bring our A game. Those are pressure situations, and that's what shows the best of all teams. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think that the extra runner, I mean, it's almost like in hockey. You know, hockey, they have the shootout. They have the shootout after an overtime is done. And then, but when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs, you keep playing
a million overtimes until somebody finally actually scores a goal.
Exactly. But of course, the whole point of that is to build pressure and even boost the adrenaline up, because it's so close, and everybody like myself is just glued to the television waiting for something to happen at just one pitch at a time or one shot at a time.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's my kind of thing. But I'm with you on that. But what was your thought? Did it seem like with the shortened season, like, what was your perspective on that? Because to me, I was kind of pissed with Major League Baseball and even with the commissioner, because I think it's ridiculous that players and owners were bickering back and forth about the whole money deal. I understand that with as far as player safety, because the risks of catching the virus, injuring themselves, I understand that. And then for the owners, of course, they're trying to run a Fortune 500 company, and they're trying to keep the lights on in the building. But the only people I felt for during this time were definitely the people that worked in the concessions, because they relied on fans. They're the ones that they bring the entertainment, they bring the food, the drinks, and it's all about the experience.
Right.
And not having that, I felt more for them. So I felt like this whole thing with the bickering, it's like, guys, you're not going to get paid either way if you're not on the field. So what were your thoughts from the shortened season, and what were the benefits behind that?
I really didn't see any benefits behind it. It was difficult. It was upsetting. It was frustrating, especially when you hear owners and players crying and complaining about money. This is something you grew up. This is something you grew up doing. This is something that you're doing for a job now. You should be thankful and privileged to be doing that. And to cry about money and this, that, and the third, like, the season being short, and it was hard, especially like thinking about how these guys are going to perform in such little time, who's going to stay healthy and who's not. Like, look at Giancarlo Stanton, look at Aaron Judge. Like, they couldn't even survive a full 60-game regular season.
Oh, dear God, no.
And I knew it was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. I think a lot of people knew that was going to happen. But especially now that you're saying like they're supposed to be prepared to report to camp, and pitchers and catchers report in a month.
Oh yeah.
And for them to be playing 162 regular season games now, like how is this going to be done? Are you guys going to have fans? Are the players going to have the vaccine? Because we look at the NBA right now, and they're playing, I think, 10 less games than they normally do in a regular season. And you're already getting games postponed due to players getting COVID, teams that can't have at least 8 guys to play to have a game played. Like, what are the safety measures? What are the precautions that MLB, the owners, and the players are taking right now for that? Are we using our home stadiums? Are we going to do a bubble? What is going on? What are the parameters right now? And what are you guys going to do to make this season be run the correct way? I know we're still in the middle of a pandemic, but how is this going to be run successfully?
Yeah, and I think from what I'm being told, they are going to be playing in their home stadiums after all. They are going to end up playing in their home stadiums. And I will say this, because me initially, like, what pissed me off even with the bickering back and forth because of the whole money deal, because ultimately these players get paid so much money just to be playing their one position. That's the one thing that boggles my mind. Like, listen, if you told me right now you want me to play right field for $1 million, hell yeah, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it because, number one, you're paying me $1 million to play one position. I'm going to be in the gym at least, it's 5 times a week, and I'm going to end up working my tail off just to ensure that, again, the money was well spent.
Shit, but somebody can hire me now to be a bullpen catcher, and I'd take that shit and run.
Hell yeah, absolutely. Like, come on, who are we fooling here? But, when I looked at this, because initially I'm not sure with the 162 games, especially with all of the outcomes that's been happening all from last year and this year. I felt like what's reasonable, because when you look at hockey, when you look at basketball, they're initially playing at least maybe 80 games a season, right? Yep. My thing is, I felt like baseball could have played 90 to about 100 games and then just butchered the 62. And what you could do is you could split 50-50 to where it'll either be you have some that are, close within the region type of matchups, right? And you could even end up playing interleague games and then continuously play, because obviously the whole point is to play more within your division. Right. That's the one thing. And then, of course, playing a few fun games like marquee matchups. I just feel like baseball, they just do not get so much of like these like how football does, because obviously the NFL is king. They get these primetime games and they boost them up. I want to see more Red Sox versus Yankees matchup. I want to see more Dodgers versus Giants matchup. And in interleagues, I want to see more Subway Series matchups. I want to see more of because initially what I think of when it comes to broadcasting and when it comes to generating money, like money revenue, I feel like games like that is what will bring the attention. And it just doesn't seem like baseball is kind of on the same page with that. And even when they mentioned, what's the one slogan that we were told? Let the kids play. The hell why are we not doing that? Because listen, if a kid's got cleats to show, let him wear it. If a kid's got, a custom glove, let him wear it. And if a kid's let them play ball, because initially it's a kid's sport, isn't it?
They don't want, like, oh no, I swear, man.
Yeah, because my thought is, we're not here to change tradition. Tradition will always carry on, like, until, I don't know, when the universe explodes at one point. But what we're trying to do is, we're just trying to make it better. We're just trying to make the tradition better. We ain't looking to change nothing with this, because tradition will always be tradition, but we want to make it better. We want to make it fun. We want to make it entertaining where people are going to watch it more often. Of course, because to be honest, nobody really pays attention to the season until the postseason happens. That's usually how that works.
It also
But I feel like if you do that,
it also depends on your demographic and your region as well, because there's certain regions where baseball is still a really popular sport, especially to watch or go to games and stuff. But like I feel like Manfred is just as bad as Roger Goodell with like not letting these guys and mostly kids have fun with it. Like you guys frown at the bat flip and want to take people's heads off. You can't wear
or swinging at 3-0 with bases loaded.
Like you can't wear like custom cool cleats or like can't do custom gloves and stuff. Like why?
Right. And initially, it's like that's what drives the viewers away. You know what I mean? And I can't even begin to tell you. I'm not even going to get into the full description. But when I heard about that 3-0 swing, that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in all the years I played and watched baseball. I've never heard anybody complain as much. And then your own manager to tell you that, I've never heard of that. My big thing is, listen, I play adult softball, and I play with a good group of guys. The biggest thing is you either don't throw me a low and outside pitch or don't cry when that ball comes right back where it came from, because that's what's going to happen. If you're not prepared when you throw a low and outside pitch, don't even bother throwing it, because initially it's going to come back the same way it came. And that's just what. You can't complain, but honestly, that's just kind of how the way that baseball is for you. And it's just a point where it's just like, get politics out of it, get all this. That's why I'm like, even you mentioned it. It's like a participation trophy. Every time when we get participation trophies, man, it pisses me off. And it's like, this is not how you're supposed to teach your kids. Like, come on.
It's like the only other thing that's driving me crazy when it comes to baseball, because I grew up playing the game from the time I was 3 years old. I had the opportunity to play single A ball in Florida about, what are we in, 2021, so 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe even longer than that, 2006 to 2008. This whole thing now where like the front offices, I don't want to say the owners particularly, but it's like mostly just like the front office and GMs are on this whole analytics stick. And like, this is another reason why you don't see a lot of certain managers in the game anymore, or why they're going with these other guys like these yes men. Small ball is tradition.
Yes.
Not analytics. And this shit drives me insane. Anytime I hear anybody talk about analytics, I can spew out stats and numbers and stuff. And I hate if somebody tries to refer to me as Mr. Analytics, because I'm not that person. I just know the game.
Same.
But when it comes to, you want to put this person in this position, or you want to do this, that, and the third, because this one hits these numbers. Play the game.
Or
stop
this one
pitches math. This is baseball. This isn't math. Cut the shit.
Right. Yeah. Same. Like that. Or this pitcher in a certain situation, he's been so successful. I'm like, no.
Blake Snell.
Yep.
Say no more.
Or how about the many times we've seen Dave Roberts pull off his antics when it comes to Clayton Kershaw? Like, good God. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting season. But I totally feel with you on that, because initially the season will always be the season. But when it comes to postseason baseball, I don't care about analytics. I don't care about statistics. All I care about is we're in this moment. It's a game of chess. Let me control the board. Let me, at the very least, play the right moves in order for us, because initially we're all just trying to win. We're all trying to outmanage the opposing team, because when you've got one manager over the other, you're hoping that you play your moves and then checkmate from there. That's ultimately what it is. So, but it's gonna be a fun season, my friend, and I'm really excited for what baseball has to offer. But at the same time, I mean, we're seeing all of these kids now it's become so much younger now than versus what it used to be. Because I mean, from what you and I used to grow up on, if you didn't have a superstar player, your franchise was never going to win games. Yep. And now it's like it's evolutionized to where, hey, now you're working through your farm system. You're working on the next up and coming thing. But it is going to be interesting. But initially, like we mentioned about Trevor Bauer and like we mentioned about Corey Kluber and, of course, so many others. In the National League, because it's now started to become competitive, and I'm pushing for the universal DH rule as well. But what are some teams that you feel like for the Mets, before we wrap this up, who are you thinking that the Mets are going to have the toughest competition against in the National League?
Well, I'll just start with the division first and go with the Braves. They've won the division the last 3 years straight. They still have a great team over there. Phillies, I don't know if they're even planning on re-signing JT Realmuto. If not, like, I feel like they're just going to continue to go downhill. Harper, he wanted money, so you left the team that you grew up playing for more money, and you're looking beyond overrated now in a Phillies uniform, and you can take that however you want. Yeah. Washington, I think that they are them and the Marlins obviously are at the back of the pack there. Other teams in the National League right now, obviously the Dodgers have been just grinding, and they had, I don't know if they still do now, they had a very, very deep farm system to make all these moves they've had over the past couple of months. Like, it was like almost every single day I was hearing or getting a new ESPN alert about the Padres doing this, that, and third. I was like, oh my God, like the NL West better watch out. Dodgers, obviously. And I tell people this all the time, like, the Dodgers originally, obviously, for those that actually know baseball, originally are from Brooklyn. So the Dodgers have a piece of me just because of their rich history and tradition, even being in LA. I think that they're going to be another team in the NL that is going to be another tough team this year. Obviously, they are going to be the World Series defending champions this year. It's going to be interesting to see, but those teams, I can't really say too many others from the NL right now besides those three, because those three are like the biggest ones to talk about right now going into the season.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, kind of looking for, throughout the National League. I mean, obviously the Padres are making moves, and you know what's kind of funny about this, because for me in a baseball background, my great grandfather, God rest his soul, every time he always told me, watch out for the Padres. Watch out for the Padres. Like it's like, and then all of a sudden here comes Fernando Tatis Jr. And then I see how this team started to jump. I'm like, was this what he meant the whole time? Because it's just the fact that they get this transformative talent. And I love Eric Hosmer, man. I love his play style and his play days in Kansas City.
Yep.
And I think he's a very valuable piece. I'm not sure what I'm going to get with Will Myers, but when his stick is red hot, he's a good hitter. And listen, let's be honest. I mean, I'm off and on when it comes to Manny Machado, but I just get to this point where I'm just like, good Lord. Like, he's the type of person that you love and hate at the same time. You love the fact that he has a ridiculous stick, but you hate his attitude.
Oh, his attitude is piss poor. He's like
oh my God, it sucks.
I wonder if him and Wentz might be related in some way, shape, or form. Maybe. Whatever the case may be. But I mean, yeah, and you know what? I mean, the Dodgers, the obvious thing is when you look at Los Angeles, you're either making or breaking. I mean, the Lakers go and get LeBron James, and the only way to fulfill that was going and getting Anthony Davis. Then they're the top notch, in LA. And then you look at the Dodgers, they're like, oh, hell, we need to keep up. We're going to get Mookie Betts. And then you sign him for a 12 to 13-year contract. It's like, Jesus Christ. Now the Dodgers are they're overloaded with talent, and that's what's going to be difficult to play in the National League. You know what? That's what happened when they got the new ownership and everything. Like, right away, they turned everything around. And that's what I'm hoping, and that's what I see the Mets doing with Cohen. Cohen is from Long Island. Cohen grew up a lifelong Met fan. He had a small ownership in the Mets organization, and he tried getting them before, and things went south last season. A couple of months later, he was able to get the team. So he's definitely building for the future. And he said he wants them to win a World Series within the next 3 to 5 years. That's his plan. The move that he made just the other day, I feel like he's trying to win right now. And Lindor, in his press conference, I believe the press conference was yesterday, he's excited to be a Met. He hasn't talked about the extension, but he did say once spring training hits, he won't be talking about it. He hoped that they will try to come to some type of terms or whatever. He's got a little girl that he said he would love for her to grow up in New York. He's dying to have New York pizza, but who isn't?
Yeah, right. I mean, listen, I've been in the
One thing I'm hoping for is there are fans at some type of capacity. I know this sounds selfish and people can take it how they want. Like, I feel like the vaccine is out. I know it's out for a select few, but I feel like if you have the vaccine, you should be able to go to it. I haven't been to me not going to Citi Field for a year is weird because I go to at least 10 games a year. If I decide to go through and get that vaccine shot, I would like to be at Citi Field a couple times this season.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what? I mean, listen, again, I've told you before, I've got family out there in New York, out there in Long Island, and like I said, I love myself a good slice of pizza. I do love, the scenery and a bunch of places. I mean, listen, I'll go either to, Montauk right on the tip, or I'll go to Port Jeff. I'll go to anywhere that's got the best scenery up out there, man. I've walked Times Square multiple times, and love being up out there. But what's interesting, though, is that, and I've said this before, I felt like the city of New York, and you've basically been there throughout your whole life, but it felt like the city of New York to me needed juice, and it needed serious juice, because the last time I was out there, it just seemed like people were pretty pissed off. People were just, it's like they're upset like 24/7. I don't see any positivity in the city of New York most of the time. And it's just like, what's the deal? Because obviously you had the Yankees right now that, like, they get injury plagued. They ain't win championships. You got the Mets, who kind of feel like they were just irrelevant. And then don't even get me started with the Knicks. And then you got, the only teams that are really kind of holding it together, in my opinion, feel like it's the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders.
Yeah, and it's more the Islanders than the Rangers the last few years, because the Rangers have been in this rebuild mode. The Knicks, obviously, their ownership is a joke in the Dolans, and I could care less how Dolan feels about me saying you're the worst owner in the NBA. You need to just sell this team. You banned me from the Garden. I really don't give a whoop. The Mets, yeah, they had terrible ownership as well with the Wilpons. I was calling them the ESPN Radio New York on a regular basis. They knew me by name. I was telling them, these things need to change. This needs to happen. Look, we got a new owner. Thank God. Now things will be looking better, and we're not going to be back page news for the wrong reasons anymore, or the laughing stock of New York. And right now, it seems like since apparently the Mets, there's still 3 teams that are in talks with DJ LeMahieu, and that's the Mets, the Blue Jays, and the Dodgers. All of a sudden, conversations have re-engaged with LeMahieu and those 3 teams. So it's a bidding war for him. I guess he wasn't too thrilled with whatever the Yankees offer was, but the new talk right now is like the Mets, if they keep spending like this, they're going to become the new evil empire of New York City, and just have to wait and see what happens.
Imagine that. I mean, you really think, like Brian Cashman and the Steinbrenners, I mean, seriously, you really think that they're going to roll that easily? If that's the case, oh man.
I guarantee you if George Steinbrenner was still alive, this stuff wouldn't be going on with the Yankees right now.
No, and I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, my God, when it came to George Steinbrenner, it was just like, is this, is that? Like he kind of just knew the places.
No nonsense attitude, and got what he wanted and made things happen.
Yeah, and with zero caps, like with zero salary cap. Like it's like everything just flowed with the Yankees.
That's the best thing about not having a cap. You can spend as much as you want, but you also have to worry about that luxury tax. And BL asks who's going to pay into the luxury tax this year, the Mets or the Dodgers. The Mets, Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, already said he wasn't planning on doing that. I have a feeling that most likely will be the Dodgers.
Yeah, and what's funny, what BL said over here, California don't need 5 baseball teams. But I'll be honest with you, BL, I've been saying this. You've even heard me say this. But at some point, I feel like I'm going to see the Athletics go to Vegas. I'm going to see the A's go to Vegas because, listen, Oakland is an absolute, it's an absolute dumpster fire. The only money they're really generating out of is in Alameda. That's it.
Yep.
They couldn't retain the Raiders. They couldn't even keep Golden State right there in the middle.
That was all the county's fault. I lived through that when I was playing minor league ball. The county that I lived in down in Florida, they didn't want to help in giving us a new stadium. So it was like, all right, we're moving to Arizona. Mm-hmm. Baltimore Orioles ended up getting a hold of the facility. They revamped the entire ballpark, and it actually looks like a minor league version of Camden. I was there 3 years ago now, and the stadium looks absolutely amazing. Like, I don't get what's wrong with these people. If you know it's going to create more revenue and get more job opportunities, why would you not contribute? Why would you not help? Look at Long Island now. The Islanders are getting a new arena that is made specifically for hockey.
And
I just drove by it today. It's right next to Belmont Racetrack. I can't wait to get inside that building once it opens. I'm so excited to see what it's going to look like. But like the people that live in these areas that are trying to get new ballparks and everything, why not help in, like, it's tax money. It's not that big a deal, but like, why not want to approve something like that to generate more revenue and generate more jobs for people, especially in times like this right now? Come on.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, think about it. You talk about the concession people, they're looking for gigs. Think about it this way. I mean, even with the pandemic shutdown, look at you, look at me, look at like all these other guys, all these other podcasters and live streamers. Who wouldn't want the gig to at some point be in the middle of broadcasting where they're in a new building? They're enjoying they're kind of sinking in the whole feeling of, man, I am in this building. It's gorgeous. I mean, for God's sakes, man. I mean, the Islanders getting in. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many stories I was told from my mother, who's gone to years ago when she remembered going to Islander games at the Coliseum. Like, oh my God.
Yeah,
this is in the 80s.
I've had so many experiences at the Nassau Coliseum growing up. I went to a bunch of Monster Jams. I went to, when there was arena football here, the New York Dragons, I went to a bunch of their games. I even tried out for the New York Dragons when I was 19 years old. A handful of Islander games, including one on my birthday where Alex Ovechkin broke Jake Hillen's jaw with a slap shot. That was like the best birthday present ever. I refused to go to Barclays for a hockey game. From everything I had heard, the dimensions, the view, it was trash. That's exactly why once the Coliseum was renovated, they went right back there. I went to Barclays for 2 net games and 2 Monday Night Raws. I would refuse to ever go to Barclays for a hockey game. Not even the same. Like, a hockey in Brooklyn? What? What?
That's totally unheard of. Like, oh man. Well, I don't blame you there. I mean, God, I could never imagine seeing hockey in Brooklyn at all, especially with its histories of baseball, bits and pieces of basketball. But good God, I would never imagine that. I can't even picture it in my mind. Like, so you're too good to be sitting at 250. Shout out to BL. Shout out to Valhalla Sports Talk. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate everybody here up in chats as well. It's good talking with you, Hammer. I mean, listen, I'm at some point, I'm trying to make my way back out there to New York again. I mean, hey, I may even plan somewhere. Like, listen, if we get fans back up into the stands at some point, I would love to actually catch a hockey game down in MSG, man. I'd love to catch it up in Madison Square Garden, watching the Rangers playing the Vegas Golden Knights, man. I mean, my first ever hockey game when I watched the Vegas Golden Knights here was actually against the New York Rangers, believe it or not. Yeah, and I cannot begin to tell you, and this was a time when the nor'easter hit, and how many New Yorkers stayed in Vegas for good reasons and at least for good excuses. They were like, listen, there's a nor'easter hitting. My business told me I could not come back to work until everything cleared up. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's the best excuse you could ever have.
Absolutely.
But man, my first experience, I don't know what the Rangers fans were chanting, and it had to deal with the refs and the line judges. But I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Like, I could not stop laughing the rest of the game. But again, what can you say about New Yorkers? They're very enthusiastic people. They, and I love a little bit of comedy. So
we're just different. That's the best way to put us. We're just different, and this is coming from somebody born and raised on Long Island, somebody that lives in the Bronx now. But I'll tell you one thing, because you're talking about going to Manhattan, going to Montauk, going to Port Jeff.
Yep.
This pandemic is over, and you get the opportunity to come to Long Island. I got a spot in my hometown. I have to take you down, and you're gonna have a blast. And if anybody that's in here right now knows me and is from Long Island, they know exactly where I'm talking about, and that's the Nautical Mile in Freeport. And bro, we'll just be kicking back, drinking, and just enjoying the view out there. I'll tell you right now.
Hell yeah, man. I mean, hell, even save ourselves a slice of pizza or seafood. I mean, listen, I went to that chowder house up out there in Montauk, and I can't begin to tell you what my experience was with that. I thought it was absolutely amazing, man.
I think I need to try to reach out to Francisco Lindor personally and tell him I'll go to that pizza shop. Remember the one I went on the rant a couple weeks ago? I went to grab pizza that night. I'll go to that shop and get a huge pie and bring it to Lindor, whether it being his front door or Citi Field. But
there you go.
Your first New York slice is on me, bro.
Hey, there you go. Hey, even spare up a little black and white cookie there for you. How's that sound?
There you go.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for coming on with me here, Hammer. Appreciate you coming on. Where can all of my fans here in the chat find you?
Check me out on YouTube. I'm at Hammer's house. We're gonna have to try to find that link and put it in if we possibly can. But yeah, the love and support would really mean a lot. We're trying to get to at least I'm still a couple shy of 100 subscribers, and I definitely would like to change this URL finally so it actually matches with Hammer's house. But it's been real. This was something that we talked about doing for a while. From the time you and I first met, I was like, we have to do something, a podcast together, and just chop it up about all our sports and everything. I definitely appreciate you throwing me on tonight, bro.
Absolutely. And there you go, folks. I got the channel right here up for you guys. You guys could definitely check it out. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for all latest notifications. Of course, Hammer always does have his weekend morning show as well that you guys can definitely check out, especially when it comes to fantasy fanatics up out there. If you guys need to sit him or start him, definitely check out Hammer at Hammer's house as well. So yeah, man, like I said, I'm looking forward to more episodes like this, man, and I'd love to bring you back on at some point soon. And like I said, man, it's going to be a fun season. I can't wait for it to start up. But hey, who knows? Maybe Lindor will definitely love the pizza and the black and white cookie, man. You never know, but I think he'll love the taste of New York in no time.
Hell yeah. For everybody that is in here, continue to stay safe during these crazy times. And most importantly, wash your hands and your asses. I'm out.
All righty. Take care, Hammer. Well, there you go, guys. Jeff Hammond, a.k.a. Hammer of Hammer's house, man. Listen, I could go on. I'm literally like already at an hour 22, already up and in here. My God, I'm like, I could go on for days. I could go on for hours, man. It's always good. It's always good talking with certain people. But you know what? I mean, think about it. Like, you have to think about it that New York seriously needed some juice. And maybe the Mets are the difference makers. And I think this is exactly what the state of New York needs. Because we're already getting the Buffalo, like we're already getting upstate of New York, Buffalo, that they're finally being competitive in New York. The Rangers and Islanders, they've made some changes, but the Islanders had made more of the impact in the hockey world. And the Yankees, the only thing you're hoping for is that this injury bug goes away, because it's like nobody knows how to stay healthy out there in the Bronx. But hopefully Queens. I mean, they got something. They got something in the cards. But I mean, it's a great day to be a Met fan for sure. All right, I'm going to take a slight break. But when I do come back, I'm actually going to be discussing a little bit more on hockey, and then not to mention Buffalo doesn't count for us true New Yorkers. That's the stakes. That's true. That's absolutely true. I mean, listen, it's either island or upstate and stuff like that. I mean, listen, it's like you're choosing your type of coffee, right? I mean, my God, I'm like, listen, I don't know about you, but if I'm coming up out there, the last thing you want to hear me say is, hey, can I have some Tim Hortons? Can I have some Tim Hortons coffee? Because you know what? I went on upstate and I said, I gotta have Tim Hortons. All right, we're gonna take say coffee. You want coffee? This is what's the fun thing about having family in New York. Every time I come up out there. All right, let me take a quick break, and we'll definitely be back with more here on the Snake Sports Talk Show.